Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Dental Assistant Council meeting. My name is Deandra Epps Robbins. I am the chair of the Dental Assistant Council. Today is Thursday, February 6, 2025. The Dental Assistant Council meeting is being held in person with additional public participation through WebRx. For those who wish to participate online, please log in to the WebEx website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone and not the microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. During each call for comments from the Dental Assistant Council members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official meeting of the Dental Assisting Council. The council welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the council's intent to ask the public comments prior to the council's taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comment shortly. For individuals participating via WebEx, when called upon, the moderator will give the individual permission to unmute themselves, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude the public comment. After the 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with testimony already provided, please just state your name and that you are in support of any comments previously provided. I would like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during this meeting.
This is the moderator of the meeting. For the purposes of today's meeting, when the council chair opens public comment, members of the public who would like to provide public comment at our DCA location in Sacramento can approach the table and microphone at the front of the room. For those joining via WebEx, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature to facilitate public comment. When the council reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," or comment in the question box, which is typically at the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. You may also use the raise hand function, and if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. I, the moderator, will call on the individual and give the individual permission to unmute their microphone. They will be given 2 minutes to make their comments, and at the conclusion, their microphone will be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who has public comment. Please note for the question and answer feature is only being used as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the council. Questions submitted using this feature will not be answered. When making your comment, please make sure the comment is directed at the host in the dropdown. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the council. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item.
I would like to call the meeting to order. Before asking board staff to call the roll, I would like to acknowledge board member Dr. Laren, who has been appointed by Dr. Chan to the Dental Assisting Council. With Ms. Pacheco terming out, thank you, Dr. Laren. Now, you're welcome. Now, board staff, please call the roll.
Good morning. My name is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, present.
Fowler,
Fowler present.
Gerlach,
Gerlach present.
Loren,
Present.
Miyazaki,
Miyazaki present.
Alagi,
Loggy present.
Smith.
Smith present.
A quorum has been established.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 2, public comment on items not on the agenda. Before we open public comment on matters not on the agenda, I would like to remind everyone that public comments should address the council as a whole and not individual members. Please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the council members, but not as a discussion between the council members and the public. The only action council members can take right now is to listen to comments and decide whether they want future agendas on the item topic. Though this may seem at times like council members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the council's mission. In interest of time, as we have done in the past, we would like to request that public comments not repeat statements made by a prior commentator. If you are in support of a statement made by a prior individual and your comments have already been made, please just state your name or association and your support for the previous commentator. Legislation hearings regularly use this practice as a good way to ensure that we can hear from everyone today. Are there any in-person public comments? Are there any comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. For members of the public on WebEx who would like to make a public comment for items not on the agenda, you can either click the raise hand icon next to your name or click the Q&A button down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. If you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 3, discussion and possible action on November 7th, 2024 meeting minutes. Is there any council member discussion? Is there a motion and a second? Please state your name and motion or second.
Fowler, I motion to accept the minutes as is.
Your second. The motion is finished. Am I supposed to? Excuse me. Thank you. I would like to accept the minutes as is. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments from individuals participating in WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand icon. And if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device.
Thank you.
And it appears there are no requests for public comment.
Thank you. Board staff, please call the roll and record votes for this agenda item.
This is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Rosen, aye.
Fowler,
Fowler, I.
Gerlach,
Gerlach, aye.
Loren,
Abstain, please.
Miyazaki,
Miyazaki, aye.
Alagi,
Loggy aye.
Smith.
Smith, aye.
The motion passed.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 4, Assistant Executive Officer Report. I am going to ask Christy Bell, Assistant Executive Officer, to present this agenda item.
Thank you. Good morning.
My name is Christy Bell. I am the Assistant Executive Officer of the Dental Board. I first joined the board in December of 2022. However, I have been with the Department of Consumer Affairs in over 10 years in various positions. Today, we will have a presentation by DCA's Solid Office to develop our new strategic plan. The Dental Board's current strategic plan is for the years of 2022 through 2025 and is concluding. The presentation will be during the board meeting and is agenda item 8. If you are not able to stay, you can refer to the webcast to watch later. Strategic planning will be discussed again at the May board meeting. Additionally, the 2025 DPA will be available soon, and we'll have additional information on how to order it on our website. Thank you.
Is there any council member discussion? Are there any in-person public comments? Are there any comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and for members of the public on WebEx who would like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand or click the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 5. Update on dental assisting examination statistics. I'm going to ask Christy Bell I'm sorry about that. I'm going to ask Christy Bell to present this agenda item.
Thank you. Christy Bell, Assistant Executive Officer again. I am presenting an update on the dental assisting examination statistics. The following tables are for informational purposes, and there is no action necessary at this time.
Is there any council member discussion? Are there any in-person public comments? Are there any comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 6, update on dental assisting licensing statistics. I'm going to ask Ms. Valerie to present this agenda item.
Ms. Valerie was unable to be here today. It's okay. I'm going to present this item on her behalf. My name is Christy Bell, Assistant Executive Officer. I am presenting the update on registered dental assistant and registered dental assistant in extended functions, educational programs and courses, application approvals. The tables are listed in agenda item 7. This is informational only and no action is required at this time.
Is there any council member discussion?
Yes. Oh, it's kind of far. Good morning. Yes, I had a question on page 17. It says that there were dental assistant applications abandoned in 23 to 24, 1,104. Just curious to find out what is the reason that they usually abandon application.
So an application is abandoned if they apply and there are deficiencies and they fail to remediate those deficiencies within the year that they have.
Deficiencies like like what kind of deficiencies are they?
So it could be they didn't pay the fee, they didn't provide the necessary documentation to prove that they meet the qualifications. It can be numerous factors.
And do we follow up with that, or do they follow up, or?
We do. When we receive an application and it's incomplete, we notify them by letter, usually more than once, that there are items outstanding. And we've actually changed our process to reach out and call them to help with the process.
Yeah, that's very important because I was noticing that there was only less than one assistant per dentist in California. That's what I was reading. So I would just hope it would be very important to follow up on that, but thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a comment.
Ms. Miyazaki, please go ahead.
So I just, kind of to follow up Dr. Loren's comment too as well. I just have observation that looking on page 22 of the documents, that I'm looking at the retention rates for the registered dental assistants. For the other, the EF and the ortho assistant, dental sedation assistant, the retention rate seems fairly high. But for the dental assisting, I realize this is a running total, but the retention rate is actually 33%. And if we consider the delinquent ones that maybe they don't, they're delinquent and they choose not to renew their license, and it drops down to 29%. And I think this really is not a great thing for the workforce. And I'm looking at the documents for the new programs and new courses on page 26 and 28 that talks about the new programs and courses that are being approved. And this creates a burden for the staff. And if we were able to retain, and this is something that I think the dental board can solve, but if we can retain the number of RDAs who pay for these 10 and 12-week programs, they're $2,500 to $5,000. And then if they fall out of the workforce, then they've paid all this money to get into the workforce. So I'm just trying to appeal to the stakeholders to see if there's anything that can be done about this retention rate, because it's really sad for the profession to have that. And for dental hygienists and dentists, their retention rate is pretty stable. And in some counties, it even goes up in some counties. But to Dr. Loren's comment that the ratio is 0 assistants to 1 dentist, that's just it's not really helpful. And we have these new programs popping up to create more dental assistants, but if we just kept them, then maybe we don't have to have more dental assistants that have to take the infection control class. And again, creates a lot of burden I believe, to the dental board staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry Becker, representing Sherry Becker. Good morning. I guess I would comment that I would be curious on those that are coming out of the profession, if there's any type of questionnaire or something. Where are they going and why are they going away? Would be not my question to you, but my question in general to this statistic, which is eye-opening, I think. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Hi, Tracy Montes, Executive Officer, semi-retired. I just would like to remind everybody too that, because this comes up often, but we want to remember that the ratio is address of record. So again, an individual may have an address in one area, but actually work in multiple areas. So just keep that in mind. And then I think that this is a very good comment for our stakeholders to explore, because again, as a regulatory board, our responsibility is not necessarily retention per se, but I think that we've created the additional pathways through our sunset bill. So we've done our job in terms of creating ways to get licensed, trying to reduce any artificial barriers to licensure. That's what the board does. But then I think it's excellent, an idea for our stakeholders to do surveys or something like that. And then that information may feed back into the board as perhaps there's something we can do with regard to the access. So that's it. Thank you.
Are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
I think we have one more comment.
Yeah, I'm just on the topic of surveys and questionnaires. I would encourage anyone that is looking at like our allied health professions. Dental Post did post their 2025 dental salary survey report, and there's some great just insight there from hiring, wages to turnover. So that was something I just wanted to bring to our attention. I would highly encourage reviewing that document.
Can you repeat who put out the document?
Oh, Dental Post. And I can also share this with us.
Any further comments? Okay, so I can continue. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 7. Update on registered dental assisting and registered dental assisting and extended functions, educational programs and course application approvals. I'm going to ask Victor Liebert, License and Program Compliance Unit Manager, to present this agenda item.
Thank you. Christy Bell, Assistant Executive Officer. I'll be presenting on behalf of Mr. Libet. I am presenting agenda item 7, an update on registered dental assistant and registered dental assistant and extended functions, educational programs and course application approvals. This agenda item is for informational purposes only and no action is required.
Is there any council member discussion?
Yes, the question is, thank you. Infection control course, does this include the 8-hour course? Because I've heard it's pretty difficult to find that, or is this the 2-hour course? Is it a combination of both, or was it, and how accessible is that 8-hour course? I mean,
This is the current 8-hour, the previously implemented 2024 infection control course. I would have to get more information on where the courses are located at. We can get that to you. I can have board staff work on that.
yeah, I would appreciate it, please. Thank you very much.
There is a table actually on our website under the dental assisting tab that actually lists all of the courses that are available and the contact information. So that might be a good starting point.
Does it specifically say 8-hour course, or is it just in general infection control?
Well,
I'll look.
It would be both.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I have a comment.
Ms. Miyazaki?
I'm looking at page 28 of the meeting materials, and again, I just wanted to reiterate that these dental assistants that are taking these courses, some of these are pretty costly. The new 10 and 12-week programs that are popping up are between $2,500 to $5,000. And if they go through a more extensive program for profit, I looked up their tuition for one of them, and it's $20,000. So again, if we don't have if the retention rate could be higher, then these students, again, won't be out of pocket if they decide to leave the profession. Thank you.
Are there any? No. DCA moderator will please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. If members of the public on WebEx would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 8, status update on pending regulations. I'm going to ask Christy Bell, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Brett Brown Nelson, Legislative and Regulatory Specialist, to present this agenda item.
Good morning. My name is Brant Nelson. I am the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist for the Dental Board. I will be presenting agenda item 8A, which is a status update on pending regulations, which begins on page 30 of your meeting materials. There are currently no pending regulations. We have a lot of regulation work that we're working on, and I'll be talking more about that in today's meeting. But there's currently no items pending. So this is an information-only item and no action is requested. And that concludes this very short item. Oh, yeah. And so actually, just a point of clarification, and this is my fault here. Agenda item 8AI, a bonus item here under here. I just want to give an update on the Dental Assisting Regulations Working Group and take a moment on that. I just want to discuss what we've been doing. I have been working with our working group subject matter expert, Kara Miyasaki, Department of Consumer Affairs Attorney, Christy Shield, and our subject matter expert colleagues at the Dental Hygiene Board of California to develop our proposed language for minimum standards for infection control, which I will present shortly. The infection control language is highly technical subject matter, to say the least, which required extensive research into CDC guidelines, really dense reading material that you probably wouldn't want to spend a Saturday afternoon on, but very important nonetheless. And we put a lot of work into this. And it required a lot of collaboration and consensus among our subject matter experts to develop. And so I would like to just take a moment to personally thank Ms. Miyasaki, Ms. Shield, who's sitting next to me. These people bring really valuable expertise to consumer protection and to the work that we're doing. So thank you very much. Just my personal thanks to you. I also want to thank, importantly, my colleagues at the Dental Hygiene Board of California. Really wonderful people for so kindly providing their expert input on the infection control language. Their assistance on this was extremely, extremely helpful and is deeply appreciated. And so I'll talk now about like what we're doing next. The board staff are currently working on dental assisting applications for the May 2025 board meeting. We'll be applying feedback from the dental board's application for dentist licensure and fees rulemaking. That's agenda item 11C in the board meeting materials to the dental assisting applications. So going forward, board staff will be continuing regulatory work on dental assisting programs and courses. That's my update on, what we've been working on and what we're going to be working on. And there's no action requested, and this concludes this agenda item. Thank you.
Is there any council member discussion?
Miyazaki? I just wanted to say thank you to the members of the working group. It was a very huge learning curve, and the documents that we went through were just so many of them. So and there's this perspective from all these different sides. It was a really great process, and I think that we did a really good job in getting that banged out in so many hours. Thank you.
Tracy Montez, again, Executive Officer. Just point of clarification, I want to point out, we actually have two working groups. So we had Ms. Pacheco, the former board member, and Ms. Miyazaki, who are on the Infection Control Working Group. We have the Dental Assisting Regulation Work Group, which is Ms. Fowler and Ms. Miyazaki. So we're wrapping up the infection control, and then we'll be going back over into the dental assisting to continue on with the articles, which will be discussed later. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any in-person comments, public comments? Are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, you can raise your hand or click the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. If you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 8. I'm on 8 or 9. 8B. Discussion and possible recommendations to initiate a rulemaking to amend CCR Title 16, Section 1005, regarding minimum standards for infection control. I'm going to ask Mr. Brent Nelson to present this agenda item.
Thank you. I'll be presenting agenda item 8B, which begins on page 31 of your meeting materials. Business and Professions Code 1680 requires the dental board to review infection control guidelines. Proposed changes to the guidelines must be reviewed by the Dental Hygiene Board of California. So the board and the Dental Hygiene Board establish a consensus. The board last updated the language way back in 2011. CDC guidelines were last updated in June 2024. So we do need to update our minimum infection control language. So back in February 2024 meeting, the board president appointed Joanne Pacheco and Kara Miyazaki to serve as the board's working group. And I'll just kind of, try to provide a brief summary of all the work we've done. Basically, after many months, we had the language in a good place, and we consulted with the Dental Hygiene Board for their subject matter expert opinions. We worked on revisions and developed an agreed upon draft. We then made an additional revision on the agreed upon draft regarding the removal of top shields, reference from the safety glasses requirement as requested by CDA. So with that revision made, the removal of the top shield requirement on the safety glasses, it has come back, it has to go back to the Dental Hygiene Board for their approval if the council agrees today with the staff recommendation to adopt attachment 2 without changes. So there's a lot of attachments to this in the materials. There's a lot of underlying data, but attachment 2 is the one that is the operative final draft that we're going to take to the Dental Hygiene Board if you guys want to proceed with it without any changes. So for action requested, do you have anything to add, Christy?
I just want to clarify that the working group concluded its work in November, and it wasn't ready for you to see at that time. So we presented it to the Hygiene Board first. They approved the draft in attachment 1 to your meeting materials. But at that meeting, the California Dental Association raised some concerns about requiring a top shield in addition to a side shield, which was what the original recommendation from the working group was. And so upon re-review by the working group after that meeting, they all agreed to remove that requirement. And so it would just be a side shield requirement. And that revision is reflected in attachment 2, and that's what we're recommending that you recommend to the board. So I hope that clarifies where we are procedurally. And again, my name's Christy Shields, your Regulations Counsel. Again, I know we don't see each other a lot, but Christy Shields, thank you.
I certainly interact with Christy Shield quite a bit via email and phone, and she does a lot of great work for the board. So thank you. And thank you for that clarification. So for action requested on page 36 of your meeting materials, the council members should review the proposed regulatory text and consider whether they would support the staff's recommendation to adopt attachment 2, or if there are suggested changes to the proposed text. After review, the staff requests that the council consider one of the following motions. So in summary, option 1, if the council agrees with the staff recommendation and has no changes, and then there's option 2, the council has suggested changes for the proposed regulatory text in attachment 2. So that is my presentation. That concludes my presentation for this agenda item.
Thank you. Is there any council member discussion?
I'd like to make a motion for option 1. I have to read the whole thing, right? I move to recommend the board approve the proposed regulatory text in attachment 2 and request that staff provide attachment 2 to the Dental Hygiene Board of California for their review and reconsideration of their prior action on this item, and to obtain a consensus with the board on the guidelines. Upon receiving notice that the Dental Hygiene Board of California has approved attachment 2 and thereby reach consensus with this board, the council recommends the board further direct staff to submit the text to the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the text and the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If after the 45-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received and no public hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed for CCR Title 16, Section 1005.
Miss Jessica Gerlach,
Gerlach, I second.
Epps Robbins, second. Is there any further council member discussion? Is there any in-person public comments?
Please have a seat.
Sherry Becker, representing Sherry Becker. I need clarification. Will this then, we have a number of concerns with some of the verbiage here, but will this be going back for a 45-day for public comment also before? I'm sorry to be confused.
Yes, it will, but I would ask that if there's issues with the text, we work it out now before we file it, because we'd rather address them now than have to hold it up and then bring it back to the board again for further modifications, because we do have the extra step of going to the Dental Hygiene Board and getting their approval as well. So it extends the amount of time involved if we don't get the issues discussed and addressed if we can ahead of the filing of the rulemaking package.
Okay.
So we would ask that you do that now if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, thank you. And can I make a request that we go through kind of page by page, because there's some items, some of the pages look okay, but some of the pages have some verbiage that's didn't make sense, or I need clarification or don't agree with. So if that's okay to do that. So I think we're starting on page 50. Is that correct? Which is the second attachment for the language.
Can you tell me what page of the text at the bottom you're on? Is it here? Page 1 or?
I see. Okay, page 1 of the 12. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. And in the board meeting materials, I'm on attachment 2, which I think was
Yes, that's the one.
what's really, yeah. Okay. So nothing for me on page 1 or 2 of those pages. On page 3, 9A and B cites hand scrubbing as part of the cleaning protocol. Listed first, I think that would be our last choice for cleaning would be hand scrubbing. The use of the ultrasonic cleaner would be a priority.
So I'm wondering, for the sake of time, because we've got a dental board meeting kind of scheduled for 10 o'clock. Do you have significant requests for revisions or concerns on every page of?
No.
Okay, so we did have a 2-minute public comment initially. I know that this is important to get worked through, so I'm just trying to stay on track time-wise.
Sure. And I think we're open to whatever suggestions and recommendations you would have for us just to be able to share some of our concerns.
It's really important to keep this one moving for sure. So if we can, if you don't only have a few issues to, inquire about or have recommended revisions, perhaps we could do that. But if it's really extensive, we may need written comments and then review it at the May meeting. So hopefully these are quick.
Review it at the dental board meeting, maybe? Option or?
Let's see how we could progress, because the DAC needs to opine on this issue, the public comments, and then pass it out for the board's review. But yeah, let's see what we can get done in a timely manner.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you again for reviewing this. And I know it was a lot of hard work. Melody Randolph here with the Dental Assisting Alliance. I think there's just 4 or 5 places where we had some questions. So hand scrubbing on page 3 being mentioned first seems like that's a acceptable alternative to using the ultrasonic. So we would recommend that be put last. Some excellent changes here and there. Another question though, on page 6, top of page 6, where it says protective attire shall be changed daily or immediately if they should become soiled, moist or visibly soiled. I think there might be a question on the addition of the word immediately, where you'd have to stop the procedure to change your gown if visibly soiled seems to be problematic. On the very bottom of page 6, B, chemical and puncture resistant utility gloves shall be available at the point of use and worn by DHCP for clinical breakdown, setting up or breaking down a treatment room. So that seems to indicate that you're going to use utility gloves to set up a treatment room, which is not how infection control is done. When you set up a treatment room, you have clean hands. So that would be hugely problematic. Top of page 7 indicates sterilizing the utility gloves, which I understand they can be sterilized, and most brands are up to 4 times, but to require them to be sterilized after each use, to me, is overkill and certainly would not be something offices would do regularly. Maybe change that word from sterilized to disinfected would make sense. And then on page 8, the addition of the word immediately, critical instruments, items, and devices shall be discarded or pre-cleaned, packaged, or wrapped and sterilized immediately after each use. Again, offices, when they're super busy, can't sterilize their instruments immediately after use. A lot of times they'll sit in a pre-clean or a pre-soak, or they'll need to sit for an hour or so before they're sterilized. So to sterilize them immediately, I think is unrealistic. And then lastly, I would just like maybe to add a clarification on the top of page 9. One of the things that I find in my infection control classes is questionable, and we talk about all the time, is having to sterilize all handpieces, low speed handpieces and so forth. Does that, in my interpretation, that includes the quick connect or the motor of the slow speed, but many offices don't sterilize the motor of the slow speed, just the nose cone. So it would be great to have some clarification in there if the motor also has to be sterilized or just the nose cone is acceptable.
Are you, I'm sorry, are you talking about F at the top of the page? or-
Yes,
That's existing standard.
yes,
Do you want to change it or you want more clarification on it?
more clarification on it. Just a comment that comes up all the time, whether or not the motor needs to be sterilized. Anything else, Sherry, that I missed?
Ms. Becker, just for the record,
Yes.
we want to make sure that you were able to complete your public comment. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tara.
Hello, Tukazo Kai, representing the California Dental Association. Over the past 60 days, CDA has received numerous complaints from dental members about challenges regarding the timing of the 8-hour infection control course to be before exposure to blood and saliva. This has been 10% of our member interactions, surpassing other topics by 23%. Oh,
My apologies. We're actually working on the infection control guidelines right now, not the course yet.
okay.
You didn't have any comments on the infection control proposal?
Well, I do have proposed edits to a piece of the timing of the course, but not the language of the course itself.
Yeah, this
So-
is just the infection control standards that we have to follow, not the course yet.
Bruce Witcher, CDA. We do have one comment regarding the language. We would just like to thank all who worked on this for incorporating one of our recommended changes, which was the removal of top shields, because from the safety eyewear. I went through that and could not find any source for that type of eyewear that would be suitable for use in dentistry, because it comes from an industrial standard, which is a different standard compared to what we do. So we appreciate them taking that input. Thank you.
Yes, we thank the board for aligning standards with OSHA and CDC for the PPE requirements.
Yeah.
Is there any other in-person comments? Any other further board discussion?
No, sorry, yeah.
Is there any other public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comments.
This is the moderator, and for members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click that raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And we do have a couple individuals, so I'm going to go in order received. First, I have Eloise Reed. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you for this opportunity. This is Eloise Reed, representing Eloise Reed. I do teach the infection control courses, both 8-hour infection control and review classes for the licentiates in California. I would just like to state that I concur with Melody Randolph and Sherry Becker with their identified needs for change or clarification on the minimum standards for infection control. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Next, I have Leslie Kanha. And Leslie, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
And registered dental assistant. I'm certified in dental infection prevention and control. I'm also a registered provider for the infection control 2-hour course and the 8-hour course. And in the minimum standards for infection control and the draft regulation that the attachment that you have, I see a number of flaws in various areas as already pointed out. But I'm particularly concerned with the dental unit water line information, that there's no recommendation or no requirement for dental unit water line testing. And per CDC guidelines, purging and flushing is appropriate. However, as stated in the CDC guidelines from 2002, studies demonstrate that this practice does not affect biofilm in the dental unit water lines or reliably improve dental unit water quality during dental treatment. And without monitoring, we have no way of knowing if we have colonization of bacteria that could be particularly harmful to patients. And citing the children's dental group event in 2016 with the non-tubercular mycobacterium outbreak, with over 73 children who were affected, 72 were hospitalized. I'm particularly concerned that there's not any mention in the dental unit water line section about monitoring water quality and not performing any kind of strategy to improve water quality upon a fail of dental unit water quality at
30 seconds.
levels. I'd also like to add that I would be very interested in providing assistance in reviewing these infection control regulations, draft regulations. So if the work groups would like to have me assist, I'm more than happy to do that.
All right, this is Christy Shields. So to the commenter, you're referring to the text on page 10.
Yes, I'm
All
sorry.
unit water lines shall be anti-retractive and the flushing of the water prior to attaching.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears we have no further requests for public comment.
So this is Christy Shilch. Do you have any further comments online, or is that it for your public comment?
I don't believe we have. That was it. Is there any additional council member discussion?
Fowler, there have been some good issues brought up. Right now, we have a motion to accept as is. Can we discuss this now, or would you like to, these issues that have been brought up?
Yes.
I'd like to
You
discuss them.
could, but I mean, I'll just tell you, they're pretty complicated. So I'm thinking maybe we might want to take this back to the working group and see if further edits should be made in response to these issues that have been raised. I mean, unless you all have strong feelings about what you've heard and know the answer
I would
right
con-
now, I'm thinking that maybe you might want to actually rescind your motion and maybe make a recommendation to re-refer it back to the working groups to address potentially these concerns that have been raised. I mean, I don't know that we could draft text on the fly here and, or you feel comfortable doing that. So,
I would like
yes.
to make a motion to
Well,
take
there's
all,
a-
oh, or to wrap.
So there's a motion on the floor. So did the
Rescind.
motioners want to rescind their prior motion and then allow a new motion on this item?
Miyazaki, I rescind the motion.
Then
Second,
Olagi second that to rescind it, and then Olagi would like to make a motion to take back public comment, any discussion that we have as a council to the working group, and then this come back to a future DAC meeting.
Is there a second?
Fowler, second.
I just want to mention as being part of the working group that I think it is important for it to go back and not, again, not to create language on the fly. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That was good. Thank you all. Thank you. Board staff, please call the roll and
Oh.
record votes.
you need to take public.
Right. We, is there any further council discussion and we need public comment?
Is there any further public comment? Any further staff, board staff member comment or discussion?
Fowler, so we're not discussing these issues now. We're moving forward just with the next agenda. We're bringing this up at a separate meeting.
Well, we have to take public comment and then vote. And if that vote is to bring it back to the working group, we'll bring it back to the working group with potentially new revisions to the text in response to these comments that we've received at the meeting. But it's hard to say now because we haven't had time to think through the comments, analyze them, and have our experts opine on them.
I would recommend receiving public comment on the motion, taking your vote, and then allowing the council members to provide their comments on the revisions that were requested so that that information can be delivered to the working group for additional work. So public comment, vote, additional council discussion on what to change or what not to change. Thank you.
Are there any public comments from individuals?
Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. Can I ask for clarification? We're commenting on the new motion to send the language back to the work group. Is that correct? Sherry Becker, on behalf of the Alliance, we agree that the language should be sent back. Thank you.
Good morning. William Kushner, DDS, California Academy of General Dentistry. I also support the motion to refer back to the committee work group for review, discussion, and re-implementation of a revised. Thank you.
Tracy Montez, Executive Officer. I would just like to explain that it is critically important that our stakeholders review meeting materials because these materials have been presented at prior meetings. And so it's very important. There's only been one change that's been made in from the other meetings. And so it's incredibly important that homework is done, the council members, the board members, and our stakeholders, because now this delays the process. It will need to come to the May board meeting. It'll have to go to the Dental Assisting Council. It'll have to go to the board meeting. And again, the hygiene board, sorry, it's going to delay things. Now, I certainly support taking this feedback. It does seem substantial. It needs to go back and vetted, but it just delays the process. So when we hear that regulations take years and years and years, this is an example of why. So it's very important that we do our homework ahead of time. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment.
I have a question for Ms. Shields. Because of the process, the requirement to coordinate the language with the DHBC, can you tell us a little bit more about the process if the working group determines additional changes are necessary?
So if this gets referred back, in which it looks like it might, then we would reconvene our working group, but we'd need to probably appoint a new member because we've lost Ms. Pacheco. So we'll probably need to agendize that. Or can the board president do that?
The chair can.
Oh, the chair can.
Mhm.
Okay, so we would need another expert on infection control for the dental board. Because we had two, and now since we lost Ms. Pacheco, Ms. Miyazaki's our only member, but which I'm happy to work with Ms. Miyazaki, but it helps to have two experts on our side because the dental hygiene board has two, and so it seemed to work well previously. And so once that person's appointed, then we can bring it back to that working group. We would go through the recommendations and comments here, and then when they make a recommendation on what they think are good changes, if any, then we would send it to the Dental Hygiene Board's working group. They would look at it, tell us if they agree, want to make changes, and it would go back and forth, which it has sometimes for weeks until we come to some kind of a consensus. And then it would come back to either one of the boards, depending on who's going to be meeting first, I guess. Because if we want to move this quickly, we're going to want to put it on the first board meeting agenda we can get on, or we could consider having a joint meeting between the two boards where we just do it all at the same time. That's an idea I'm going to throw out there.
Well,
But-
it would
but
need
anyway,
to come to the
but-
DAC first.
But it would go to the
before
DAC first,
the
and then it
dental
would go to the
board.
two boards.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's an excellent point about timing because if the working group finalizes, with working with the DHBC experts, if they finalize language, that there are changes, it could go to the dental hygiene board first.
Yes.
For consensus, then come back to the DAC.
Yes.
Okay. Also, can we request that the stakeholders submit their written comments so that we, have actual text to review?
We can. I don't know if they can, it would be helpful to us.
Right. It's helpful.
They don't want to, they don't have to. But
Yeah.
it would be helpful.
Something
They
to
could
refer
send it
back
to Miss,
to.
I don't know if you want to have them send to you, Christy, or Brant. Okay. So if you could, that would be really helpful. If not, then we'll work with what we got at this meeting in the minutes. So. And then if any of the council members have any insights or that you want to proffer in response to what you've heard. I know it's on the fly. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. But if you have any guidance you'd like to provide the working group, that would help too.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Olagi, would you like to make a comment in regards to being part of the working group?
I would love to partner with Cara, with the hygiene board, to be able to get this across the finish line. So if there is another person needed, I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Board staff, please call the roll and record. Oh, we need additional. Okay, sorry. All right, thank you. Board staff, please call the roll and record votes for this agenda item.
This is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, aye.
Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Gerlach,
Gerlach, aye.
Loren,
Green, aye.
Miyasaki,
Miyazaki, aye.
Olagi,
Olagi, aye.
Smith. The motion passed.
Is there any feedback from the council about any of the discussion that we've heard? Ms. Miyazaki?
As being part of the working group, I thank you for your comments and your future notes that we sent to Christy about your concerns. And I think that many of these are easily could be easily addressed. And just want to remind everybody that all this information is evidence-based on the guidelines for state and federal guidelines. So we have to refer to them. Like, again, like for instance, hand scrubbing, like I personally would prefer that we just take that out, but that's not evidence-based and it's not I can't enforce my guideline and arrest somebody for that. So I think that we can get through this quickly. The one thing that I do agree with is the dental unit water line monitoring. I think that that's the one that we can't, that I think the rest of them will be, could be easily accepted by the dental hygiene board, but the dental unit water lines, that information actually should be in this document. And we could work with the DHBC on that, with their subject matter experts too. Thank you.
Dr. Loren, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you for all the work on this. It's great. But I did have some comments. I wanted to clarify that I do agree to remove the areas that say immediately. That is not feasible in dental offices. That's going to be very, very difficult. And also, there was mention of the motor handpiece part. That is also very important to clarify. We all have those questions. So I would recommend changing the language on that. Thank you. Or clarifying.
Fowler, I also agree with Dr. Loren and Kara. I'd also like to say the utility gloves for setup, that's also something that should be addressed.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 9, legislation of interest. I'm going to ask again, Mr. Nelson, to present this agenda item.
There's a lot of pages after that infection control, so I'm flipping through all the underlying data to go to the next agenda. I apologize. So the current, I'll give a, hold on a minute. Oh, here it is. Okay. So yeah, I think this information is found on page 113, but the legislation of interest, there's currently no legislation of interest as of the date of the memo that I provided. And so the way the legislative process works is bills are being introduced. At May's meeting, I anticipate having a much larger analysis for everyone's review. And we will still have the opportunity to look at bills, decide if we want to, write letters or take positions on them, et cetera. But currently, this is an information only item and there's no update. So that concludes this very brief agenda item.
So I'm Tracy Montez, again, Executive Officer. With this item as well, we do have a legislative proposal that we're going to be asking the council to comment on and make a recommendation to the board. And my role here this morning is to just simply lay some context to this. Many of you received this late yesterday, and we recognize that that's very short notice. Sorry, go ahead, Tara.
Council Chair, would you like to get public comment on agenda item 9A before we move on to agenda item 9B?
Is there any public comment?
So this is public comment on agenda item 9A.
Okay. Are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and for members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment on this item.
Any council member discussion? Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 9B. Discussion and possible recommendation for legislative proposal to amend Business and Professional Code BPC sections 1725, 1750, and 1753.52 and repeal BPC sections 1754.5 and 1755 regarding dental assisting courses. I'm going to ask Mr. Nelson to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to jump back in. Thank you, Ms. Welch, for reminding us about public comment on 9A and getting the title of item 9B read into the record. So I'm going to be presenting the introduction to this, and then I'm going to step aside and let Mr. Nelson and the other members of the team go into detail of this item. So if you recall, back in November, we explained to the council and the board that there were provisions within our sunset bill regarding the infection control course, primarily that the board was unable to implement. And we explained, we had a rather large sunset bill. And of course, as we started moving into implementation, we realized that there were details of grave concern that again allowed us or prevented us from implementing this piece. And there was a detailed memo that was presented to you. And so after working with our working groups and our stakeholders and trying to reach a compromise on how to address the concerns, we essentially realized that we could not resolve it, that there were just deficiencies, discrepancies that, again, we could not resolve. So therefore, board staff was going to recommend and has to the council and the board to repeal these sections and essentially correct the issue through the regulatory process. And that was the plan. However, in recent weeks, we have received quite a bit of feedback from our stakeholders about frustrations with a delay of implementing this portion of our sunset bill. So we spent time yesterday crafting out a legislative proposal. And the reason why I say yesterday is because it got to that point where, okay, we need to do something a little different. And so a legislative proposal was drafted for additional consideration with the item that was originally in your agenda packet. And so again, we know that you received this late yesterday. We did send it out to our stakeholders, and we do have copies of it on the check-in table. It will be posted as well. But we wanted to provide an option to the council to consider for recommendation. So you have your original agenda item that discusses repealing those sections and going back through the regulatory process, or you have this legislative proposal for consideration that, again, could be recommended to the board. Either way, you have the option, many options this morning, but we would hope that you can move something forward to the board because, again, this is dealing with time. And I want to emphasize too that the legislative proposal was something that we had attempted to do, and again, we pulled back because it was very challenging to get consensus. But because of the concerns, we put something together and we tried to articulate the true intent of SB 1453, which had to do primarily with the interest in having a virtual option of the 8-hour infection control coupled with the public safety, and that is requiring unlicensed dental assistants to take a course prior to working with patients. And that was really the two pieces that were very important that we captured in the sunset bill. Where it became difficult to implement, as we shared in November, was that we had no detail about the lab. We have one infection control course for programs versus this new 8-hour course. So again, there were some details that made it very difficult. So with that, again, I want to emphasize the importance of collaboration and working together and realizing that it's impossible for us to make everybody happy, but we need to look at this from the perspective of consumer safety. That is the major primary mission of the council and the board. So as you discuss this, and we recognize that our stakeholders and ourselves personally have opinions about how this should roll out, we need to keep in mind that we're looking at patient and consumers of dental services, their safety. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my team, who are experts on this legislative proposal. And I'd like to thank Ms. Welch, who again helped us navigate this with her expertise in the legal arena. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. So, Ms. Montes. I will provide with the document that you guys got at the entrance there. I'm going to kind of just overview some things, and if you have questions or if there's any points of clarification, please chime in and let me know if there's something that you need to discuss. But so what this proposal would do, it's going to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1725 to include course application fees for the ITR infection control course and radiation safety control. It also removes proposed amendments to BPC section 1750, which are no longer necessary to accommodate the proposed repeal of BPC section 1755. It also inserts a fee in the section 1725. So there's some new fees involved for your review.
Just to clarify, there's no new fee. The
Thank you. Sorry.
amendment to the ITR section is just to change the reference from the fee set in regulation to the fee that would be set in statute under 1725.
Thank you. It's always helpful to have an attorney around. Also, this amends BPC section 1755, the infection control course, to limit the course to unlicensed dental assistants and grandfather in courses completed under the existing board regulations. It establishes a course, electronic course application and board approval process, director, faculty, and laboratory requirements modeled on existing infection control regulatory requirements, and provides students protection for electronic course delivery. So that's kind of my overview of what this achieves. Go ahead, Ms. Welsh.
The legislative proposal that you received yesterday, also, instead of repealing section 1754.5, the radiation safety course, this new proposal would also add a board approval process and laboratory and clinical provisions that are currently in the regulations, move those into the statute, and provide student protection for electronic course delivery with the intent to ultimately repeal the radiation safety course regulations, CCR sections 1014 and 1014.1 if possible. So, we're trying to clean up regulations, since now there's this new radiation safety course statute, we could just, try to move everything over into the statute so it's, clearer what the requirements are. So I guess I would say you've got two proposals before you. I don't know if the council has one proposal that they would like to start with or just go to the other proposal. I would say that the latest proposal that you received yesterday, copies of which are available here, and we were trying to get that posted online as additional meeting materials. This is to, we've got this deadline. This infection control course in particular is the one that we're trying to get resolved as soon as possible because that statute is already in effect. We had implementation problems. We recognize the need to address consumer safety through having more dental professionals available. And so if we can, get infection control courses available to dental assistants so that they can start to provide services to consumers, that is one of the balancing tests here. So instead of trying to repeal what the legislature just added last year in the board sunset bill, we're just trying to tweak these so that these are more palatable for board staff in terms of implementation. So we needed a board process to approve or deny applications in case there's non-compliance. We needed some clarification on what laboratory instruction is, especially when it's the laboratory instruction and regulation requires oversight like supervision and in-person participation, whereas the new statute contemplates electronic delivery of both didactic and laboratory instruction. We're also focusing the statute on dental assistants. From what we heard in stakeholder meetings on these issues in December, the real concern is getting dental assistant course access, not necessarily changing how individuals applying for registered dental assistant licensure access infection control courses. Right now, the statute would establish a different pathway for some RDA license applicants. They would have to take this statutory electronic infection control course, while other RDA license applicants, those who go through a standard educational program, and as well as I think the Danby pathway is also not accommodated in this new statute. So we're trying to understand why there needs to be a different infection control course for RDA license applicants, depending upon the pathway that the individual chooses to seek their license. The focus and conversation was on unlicensed dental assistants and getting them working as soon as possible. So the amendments yesterday refocus that statute on unlicensed dental assistants. It also provides some additional grandfathering clauses so that dental assistants who've been working for many years and took the 8-hour infection control course under regulation, they would not have to immediately turn around and take this new 8-hour course where there's 6 hours of didactic instruction and 2 hours of lab. So, you know, we're trying to be helpful here and make sure that people don't have to take multiple courses on the same issue. You know, both of these legislative proposals are up for your consideration.
Just to clarify, I don't have anything to add to Ms. Welch's explanation. I thought it was very thorough and concludes any comment from me.
Is there any council member discussion on this item?
Fowler. On the infection control component here, I had a couple questions. So I see that we're adding in the 8-hour with the 6-hour didactic, the 2 hours laboratory using a series of video training tools, ultimately removing the hands-on component with that option. So there is benefit to having hands-on in that infection control. I'm concerned a little bit about that option. And the second question I had is, it states the course director shall possess a valid, active, and current license issued by the Dental Hygiene Board of California. So this eliminates the possibility of possibly even a DDS becoming director, or so it limits the possible amount of infection control courses just down to maybe a hygienist being the director. So
So through the Sunset Bill process last year, there was a lot of conversation about whether or not in-person instruction is necessary for infection control. The legislature voted to not require it in 1755 for, you know, these two purposes. It's unlicensed dental assistants, and I don't have the other language in front of me. There's the other pathway for RDA licensure. So on some level, we're trying to work with the existing statute So for unlicensed dental assistants, the existing statute does not require in-person instruction. We recognize that there's a public safety component to that, but from what we understand, our conversations with legislative staff, the legislature has already approved that. So really, my question to you is, we know that there is concern about no in-person instruction on infection control. Coming out of COVID-19, we understand how important infection control is, especially for dental health providers. Should RDA license applicants any pathway to that licensure and the additional duties that they're allowed to do under the statute, should they be allowed any pathway to take an infection control course electronically? Because of the expanded duties that RDAs perform and subsequently RDA-EFs, should we have more public protection by requiring that in-person clinical instruction for all RDA license pathways? I think, that may be where to focus the conversation on for your consideration. I know you had a couple other comments. I think DDS provision, that's not currently in the regulations. The infection control course requires the course directors to have a dental board RDA license or a dental hygiene board of California license. That might be something to consider.
Fowler here, and that would be fine. It could be continued to be written that way. Right now, it's just stated as the director has to have a license from the Dental Board of or Dental Hygiene Board of California. It doesn't mention anything else in that. I don't know if we're changing what we already have in statute, and this is what we're not changing what we currently have.
No, this language is intended to mirror what's in the regulations.
Then should we add in there that the director can have a license from the Dental Hygiene Board of California?
It's in there. It's in regulation right now.
So on page 11, this is Miyazaki, page 11 of the new materials, it says course director shall possess the valid, active, and current license issued by the board or the Dental Hygiene Board of California.
Okay, yes, I see it. Thank you.
Can I go for it? Any comments? Does the council have any further discussion on this agenda item? Is there a motion and a second? Please state your name and motion or second. Ms. Miyazaki?
I'm going to make a motion for option 1, move to approve the recommendation for submission to the board, the legislative proposal to amend BPC section 725, 1753.52, 1754.5, and 1755 regarding dental assisting courses.
Is there a second?
I have a question just on tracking. When we do this, the one I'm looking at is specifically the 8-hour infection control for dental assistants that would now go from 30 days to 60 days, needs to be completed.
No. The motion that Ms. Miyazaki just made is the new legislative proposal that does not make any changes to BPC Section 1750. 1750 was proposed to be amended in the first legislative proposal that would also have repealed Section 1755 for infection control. So if we repeal 1755, the new infection control course, so that we can move quickly with stakeholders, buy ourselves some time to have conversations about the appropriate, levels of instruction and flesh out what should be required for electronic delivery of some of this instruction. If we bought ourselves time by repealing 1755, we also heard that we needed to do something about that immediate requirement for dental assistants to take the infection control course. That immediate requirement is existing law right now in 1750. Since at this point, we're just proposing to amend 1755 and not repeal it, it seemed that there were no necessary amendments to 1750 at this point.
Thank you.
Is there a second on this motion?
Smith, I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any public comments? Any in-person public comments?
Okay, I know the difference between the number 8 and 9. Tukas Okai, representing California Dental Association. Thank you for your collaboration and emphasizing this significant challenge. Over the past 60 days, CDA has received numerous complaints from dental members about challenges regarding the timing of the 8-hour infection control course to be before blood and saliva, and this has been 10% of our member interactions, surpassing other topics by 23%. This unintended consequence to hiring and confusion about the course timing can be addressed through this swift legislative action, giving the board the clarity it needs to approve the virtual course option it supported in last year's sunset and this proposal, and by providing a cushion for employers to ensure the course is completed soon after the hire by giving employers up to 90 days to have their dental assistants complete the course. This would be an amendment to Section 1750C. These changes will allow providers to get online courses board approved, addresses the new barriers to practice hiring, and allows unlicensed DAs to take the course early on, but at a time where they have enough context from on-the-job experience to understand the material. While we are very pleased to see that the board is taking this collaborative approach with stakeholders and the legislator on this issue, we anticipate there to be no changes to the law, even with urgency language will be effective until summer. In the interim, can the board provide guidance to dentist employers when they are unable to get their new unlicensed DAs enrolled in a course in a timely manner? Do you recommend documenting these challenges with when an unlicensed DA begins work in the office and the 8-hour infection control course cannot be practically completed within the new timeframe to avoid any workforce stoppages? We hope you consider this proposed amendment to 1750C and explore the questions on documentation of the challenges without a currently online board-approved course that addresses the full scope of the course.
Dr. Bruce Witcher, just speaking in support of Ms. Okai's comments. Thank you. CDA.
Melody Randolph, representing the Dental Assisting Alliance. Couple of questions on the document that was sent yesterday. The question about the grandfathering in. I'm confused about the grandfathering in issue. If that's grandfathering in, as legal counsel mentioned about it being somebody who's already taken the 4 and 4 8-hour infection control, not having to do a 6 and 2. Does that also include grandfathering in the providers that are approved for 4 and 4? Would we have to reapply to be approved for the 6 and 2, or are we grandfathered in to be able to change our course from the approved 4 and 4 to a 6 and 2? So again, to me, the way I read it and read it quickly still causes a problem with you have no approved 8-hour infection control providers under this new document because nobody's approved for a 6 and 2. So needing clarification on that. And then just personally, Melody Randolph, speaking for Melody Randolph, I think the compromise of and I agree with the comments, again, that legal counsel made about the RDA having 2 different pathways for the infection control. If you're on the job trained, you don't have to do a lab, whereas somebody graduating from an RDA approved program does a lab session. So I personally think the new compromise of having to take the lab course, it's on the last page of the document that was set yesterday under G, I believe it was, that an RDA would have to take the 8-hour infection control with a lab component in order to qualify for the RDA, clears that problem up. So there's not 2 different pathways. And so if we do approve a virtual only option, we, representing the Dental Assisting Alliance, we strongly oppose the 60-day option for getting it done. If they're going to do an online only version for 8 hours, that's 1 day. They can get that done before they start working. If they get hired on Monday, they can do the
30
8 hours
seconds.
online Tuesday and start work on Wednesday. Not a problem. Thank you.
Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. I concur and agree with Melody Randolph's statements. Thank you.
William Kushner, as an individual, I appreciate the motion that's on the floor, and I understand that you have some good insight. So I support the repeal of the 1755 and the motion that is on the floor presented. Thank you.
Sir, can you please return? The motion on the floor is not to repeal 1755, but to amend it. So I just want to make sure you understand what you're supporting.
I do understand. And no, thank you. I do believe it needs to be amended and taken back. And that's the motion that's on the floor. I'm sorry for misspeaking.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments from individuals participating in via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and for members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click that raise hand icon or the Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And we do have a request from Leslie Canahan. And Leslie, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Leslie Canham, a registered provider of the infection control course, the 8-hour course, and I concur with the recommendation to grandfather providers in to expedite the process of the 6 and 2 process for delivery of the 8-hour infection control course. And I do want to comment that I have been certified in dental infection prevention and control fully online, and it is possible to provide public safety and expedite course delivery to unlicensed dental assistants through an online process. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment.
Miyazaki?
I just want to clarify that the portion for, in 1750 that says, the employer, the dental assistant should be responsible for ensuring that the dental assistant has successfully completed a board-approved 8-hour course in infection control will stay as prior to performing any basic dental procedures involving potential exposure to blood, saliva, or potentially infectious material. So the 60 days has been taken out. And Tara, would you have any comment about the providers, if they're grandfathered in or not?
You could revise your motion to include something about this issue. The language, I'm trying to find prior language that we were, staff and I were tossing around at one point. I don't believe that the board could just automatically grandfather in currently board-approved infection control courses and give them board approval for this new 8-hour, 6-hour didactic, 2-hour lab under their prior approval. I believe that the course providers who wanted to do that would need to submit additional documentation of compliance with the new requirements proposed in 1755. So if they were already board approved to offer the 8-hour infection control course under a program or 1017.6, 1017, the infection control course regulation, they would also, if they want to continue to have board approval for the 1755 electronic course, they would have to submit an application showing compliance with those requirements because they're somewhat different than the regulatory infection control course requirements. Because there's, a new component, these infection control courses, didactic and laboratory would all be offered purportedly through electronic means. So if the currently approved provider, they don't have to show any compliance with notification or assistance with technology for the students. They don't have to tell them, hey, this is how, these are the technology requirements for you to participate in this course. That would be a new requirement under these amendments. My point is that currently approved providers would need to submit an application to get approval to offer these new courses, albeit potentially it would be easier for currently board approved providers, but they would have to demonstrate compliance with the new amended statute.
Miyazaki, I have a question. If, say, a provider is teaching a course that is 32 hours and 23 hours are 20 hours are lecture and the other rest of it is lab, so they're over the requirement, do they still have to submit like a new application?
Board staff Tina Valerie would like to join in and she can speak to this topic.
Hi, Tina Valerie. I'm the chief of the Dental Assisting Unit and License and Program Compliance Unit. And I just wanted to comment, as Tara just went over, that all of our current infection control course providers are approved under California Code of Regulations 1070.6. And so with this new statute and the new requirements, all providers would have to apply under this new pathway because, again, this would be applicable to unlicensed dental assistants. So there would be two separate courses. And so the providers interested, and if you offer the 8-hour course under 1070.6, you could still apply and teach both, but it would require a separate application. Thank you.
Miyazaki, I just would like to make another comment about the public comments concerning the sort of like if you're in a rural area that the course should be taken immediately, and that would be a hardship. But again, I think I just want to refer back to the comment I made back on the meeting materials on page 22 about the retention rates of dental assisting. So I think this could be like a workforce issue as well. If we retained our dental assistants, then we wouldn't have to have more coming into the workforce as often. So again, maybe this is like something that could be addressed again by the stakeholders, because that way we don't need to have all these courses, more new courses coming up to burden the staff to approve it. And also all the applications that we have for the RDA, which is great. But again, the retention rate for dental assisting, I know, is much lower than dental hygienists and dentists. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Board staff, please call roll and record votes for this agenda item.
This is Marilla Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, aye.
Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Gerlach,
Gerlach, aye.
Loren,
Lorraine, aye.
Miyazaki,
Miyazaki, aye.
Alagi,
Alagi, aye.
Smith. The motion passed.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 10, adjournment. This concludes the February 6, 2025 Dental Assisting Council meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.